Roy is a member of Austin PPA, Texas PPA, competes at the highest level of PPA. He is teaching a bird photography class for Texas PPA. What's the date for that, Roy? I looked and then I forgot.
March 15th.
March 15th. And that'll be out at Pedernales Falls. So Roy, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, it would be great.
Okay.
And I forgot one of his credentials. Roy is a master photographer, which means he's had 8 images that scored 80 or above, and several of his images have gone to the loan collection. So just a super, super quality photographer. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. And that's not. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Bill, for asking me to give this presentation, and thank all of you for having me and joining me this evening. I get to talk about photography, which I love to do, and in particular, bird photography, although I just love nature photography in general. I'll shoot anything that moves and most things that don't move.
Roy, just one thing. You've got your presenter's view up also.
I do. So how do I get rid of that? Because all I can see is this one.
Ooh. Okay, we see your introduction slide and a timer.
Okay, then
we can deal with this. Let's not.
I've got to switch screens then. How do I do that?
Ed, you may have to help here.
There's swap displays at the top. I don't know what that does.
Yeah, it's view options. I'm not sure.
How come we didn't have this problem last time when we tested this, Bill? Y'all have to forgive me. This is the first time I've been on the presenting side of a Zoom presentation. So, and I'm not the most technically qualified person there is. I'll tell you what, maybe if,
Oh, Roy, your systems have been reconfigured today, haven't they?
yeah. Let's see. There's got to be a way to switch the screens.
There's there is a swap displays icon at the top, at least on the top of my screen, right in the top in the middle.
Okay. Let me stop this for a minute.
Okay.
And then, because I have to get out of PowerPoint first. Huh. Can you hang on just a second? I apologize for this.
No problem.
I've been there.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. I hope. All right.
It's even more embarrassing in front of a few hundred people.
Oh, is that how many we have? How are we doing now? Do you see the screen?
We're back to our home screen.
Okay.
I think we have 19 participants.
All right.
Well, that's not a few hundred people.
Wait until you're at Pedernales.
And
Yeah, really.
There you go.
Okay. Maybe I'm not as technically challenged as I thought. Okay. So anyway, like I said, thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. Do you see my controls there over the deal here, or do you just see the slide?
Just the slide. That's
Good.
what you want.
Okay. All right. As Bill said, I'm a member of several associations, Austin PPA, Texas PPA, and the Professional Photographers of America. I have been a member of this organization several times, and I really think it's a great organization. There's some really outstanding photographers in there. I've just basically, y'all were meeting on the other side of town for me, and I was so stretched out on other things, it was difficult for me to make the meetings. So I'm gonna have to make a better effort in that in the future and everything. But some of you are probably better photographers than I am. You know, I consider myself to be more of an artist than I do a photographer. So let me give you a little bit of background. I started out in commercial art at Texas Tech. And long about my third year in college, I figured out I wasn't exceptional enough artist to make the kind of living I wanted to make off of that. So I left school and got into retail for a while, which wasn't much better, but I got to manage a camera store and other things for about 8 years. And then when retail started opening up 7 days a week, I decided to go back to school. And I went back to Texas A&M and got my degree in accounting there. But while I was going to school at the university, I worked as a photographer for the university. And so I was kind of getting to do my first love along with my schoolwork. And after I got out of school, I got away from photography for a while. And when I got back into it in the year 2000, I started looking for a camera. And I went on eBay and some of these other ones, I'm going, oh, wow, look, a Nikon F4 for $400. Those things were thousands of dollars back when I was in photography before. And, you know, that's what I realized. Well, wait a minute, everything's digital now. You know, all the film cameras are cheap and everything. So I was introduced into the world of digital photography. I really got serious as far as a professional photographer around 2015 is when I joined PPA. And I think something that I know the one thing that really turned my photography around was getting into image competition. I've been published in Cowboys and Indians magazine, Houston Chronicle, and I'm going to, oh, well, I've submitted images for the National Wildlife Federation for use as their product sales. And as Bill said, I've been competing on PPA for about the last 5 years and had very good success in that. I've had 7 images that have been accepted into the loan collection, which now they call Imaging Excellence. And basically what they do is when they have their annual image competition, which is the international print competition, they usually have about 5,000 or 6,000 images that are submitted, and roughly 40% is accepted as merit images, which that's what you want because that's how you accumulate the merits towards your degrees and other things. And then after everything's been judged for a merit, then they go back and they select the top images, usually about 10 to 20% of those for their loan or imaging excellence awards. And I've been competing for 5 years. And like I said, I've had 7 images accepted into that so far. And hopefully we'll do a little bit better on that this next year. This is the image that, and I can't really stress image competition enough because, you know, you've got to have a thick skin because sometimes they tell you things that you don't want to hear, but it makes you look for the little details. But the other thing is just normal competitions are good too. This is an image I submitted to the National Wildlife Federation image competition in 2011. And even though I didn't win anything in the actual competition, they came back to me and said, hey, we would like to use your image Bison in Winter, which I took in Yellowstone, for our product sales. So basically this image has been on their Christmas card collection for about the last 7 years. And in 2014, the president of the National Wildlife Federation selected this as his image for the Christmas cards that he sent out personally to all of his members. And like I said, I just submitted it and something good came of it. As a side note, they have an image competition going on right now that I think goes until April the 4th. And one good thing about this that appeals to a lot of people is they don't like a lot of editing on the images. You can do your basic editing like cropping and contrasts and things like that, but they certainly do not want compositing or a lot of Photoshop. So it's a good competition for a lot of photographers to enter, and it doesn't cost a whole lot. I think you can enter, 20 images for like $25, and you just never know what'll happen. This is kind of what we're going to go over tonight, is where to photograph, the equipment to use, some settings, bird behavior, approaching, photographing, photography etiquette, and editing. One thing is where to photograph. You can go just about anywhere for birds. That's the great thing about birds is, they're all over the place. The state parks is a great place to go. As Bill had pointed out, I'm actually doing a workshop there for Texas PPA in conjunction with the Texas Parks and Wildlife out at Pedernales on March the 15th. Inks Lake, they have two great bird blinds out there. I'm sure a lot of you have already been out there and know that they have some very nice facilities out there. Inks Lake is another good state park to go to with a good bird blind, but you can go to the state parks websites and they'll usually tell you what kind of facilities they have. Another good resource is nature preserves. Brazos Bend's, well, that's actually a state park. South Padre Island Nature Center is an excellent place to go. I'll go through and show you a few photos that I've taken out there to where you can really get close to the birds, and they have a good variety out there depending on what time you go to. Aransas National Wildlife Refuge is a good place to go. Rescue facilities, Houston Audubon Raptor Center over in the southwest part of Houston is a good place to go. I was there the end of December. I think once a month you can sign up on their website, and they have like 10 to 15 photographers that come out once a month. They have people out there that bring the birds out for you to photograph. It's about 3 hours, and they do a really good job of catering to the photographer as far as posing the birds and putting them in good situations, and also making suggestions on how to photograph. During nesting season and when they have chicks in the nest, rookeries are a good place. My two favorite to go to is Smith Oaks Rookery down on Bolivar Peninsula, and they have a fairly small but good access rookery over in Taylor at Murphy Park. If you want to spend a little bit of money, they have bird ranches. South Texas has a proliferary of bird ranches down there. Two of ones I've gone to quite a bit is Santa Clara near Rio Grande City, and also La Lomita in Uvalde. The prices vary on that. Like at Santa Clara, if you're just a single photographer, it's $175 a day, plus $175 a day for the guide. If you have two people that's with you, then it goes to $150 and $150. And of course, the more people you bring with you and everything, then the price goes down. La Lomita is a little bit more reasonable. It's $200 a day. And if you have two people, it goes down to $150. And again, the more people, then the price goes down and everything. La Lomita is more for songbirds, perching birds. They've got a couple good locations that have water features and ground level blinds. At Santa Clara, they have like 4 blinds. They've got 2 for raptors, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And then they've got 2 for, which are ground level blinds, which again, 1 for the morning and 1 for the afternoon. And they do a really good job of guiding you and, putting you in the right place at the right time. And that's the big thing about photography, is being where you need to be. One thing that's always available is your own backyard. You know, you can set up a few feeders and a watering place, and the birds will come. They're always looking for food. It's cheap, you know, you can get really close. But the thing about that is you need to clean your feeders out fairly frequently, and same way with your watering facilities, because, you know, if you leave them out there too long, you run the risk of the birds transmitting diseases and things like that. So it's always a good idea to take care of the birds. This is just a few of the things. This is a water feature out at Pedernales. And basically, if you have water and feed, the birds will come. It's another one that gives you good opportunities. This is at Aransas National Wildlife Federation. There's a couple good guides that take you out the boats out there when you can get really close to the whooping cranes. Good time for whooping cranes is in February, sometimes January. You know, that varies a little bit, but February is usually a good time to go down there, and you can get some really good close shots there. This is the South Padre Nature Center. And I've got a couple here with different focus points and everything, but this is probably 20 feet away from the boardwalk. Same way here. You can get very close to them. They're used to people. They don't scare real easy. This is the other part of that where, you know, the nest during the nesting season, very available, get some really good shots and everything there. This is the Murphy Park in Taylor. You can see it's not a big rookery, but it has some good subjects that you can get to. This is the Smith Oaks in Bolivar Peninsula. And as you can see, there's a lot of birds, and there's even the alligator waiting for the chicks to hatch and some of them to fall out. Now, Houston Audubon Society's done a really great job with this facility. They built this boardwalk a few years ago, which brings you access to the rookery. And I can't emphasize enough how much they've gone to give just a great opportunity for bird watchers and photographers alike. This is some of the setups they have there. They have about 5 of these viewing stations to where you can get an upper level and a lower level at the birds. And as you can see over to the right and everything, the birds are relatively close to where you don't need a super telephoto to get some good shots. This is at Santa Clara. And basically this is where they have one of the raptor blinds set up. And these raptors are pretty much trained, because once the pickup starts heading over to where you're going to set up to shoot and everything, the hawks and the vultures and caracaras and any other raptors that are around, they start congregating because they know that the brisket is going to be put out pretty soon. And as you can see here, you get a very good variety of what you can shoot. This is one of the ground level blinds they have that, you know, you're within probably 20 to 30 feet of where most of the birds are going to come in, so you can get some very good shots. This is just an example of what they put together, not the shot itself, but just shows what, with the screws and the branches, that, you know, they pretty much fashion the setup to get the best photographs you can. They also usually have a drip station set up to where the birds can perch and get a good shot of drinking and everything there. And it gives you a nice flat background that's not too distracting. And like I said, you can always set up in your backyard. This is a feeder I have on my back porch to where you can get some nice close-up shots and get a good variety of birds. But like I said, it's very important that you take care of these where you're not neglecting them and taking a chance of causing harm to the birds. You know, a good cheap seed bell can attract a lot of different birds. And this is the Houston Audubon Raptor Center. As you can see, instead of cropping down, I kind of wanted to show what they do here as far as setting up the birds in a nice position. And there's a lot of different angles that you can get to them and take different shots. They will make suggestions and help you so you can be an amateur or a professional and take advantage of this. In case like this, a lot of the, well, in fact, most of the birds are injured. You know, it's a rehab center, but most of the time the birds are permanent residents here. In a case like this, you can do your own little editing and make a copy of the good wing and flip it over and put it on the other side, and you've got a nice image of a bird there, and nobody really knows where it came from. Same way here. This is a suggestion they made of that, making a peeking shot of getting the right angle, and they'll set it up for you, and you can take your turns at getting the proper shot or the shot that you want to. So we're going to talk a little bit about equipment: cameras, lenses, tripods, tripod heads, flash, and other accessories. You know, from listening to some of y'all when we first were waiting to start the meeting, I get the impression a lot of this stuff is going to be old hat to some of you. You're probably as well-versed and as experienced as I am on this, but hopefully there's some people here who are just getting into this, and maybe we'll help out a little bit on this. On your cameras, you know, you've got the choice of a full frame camera or crop sensor, and even on your full frame cameras, you can set that down to where you have a crop sensor. The good thing about a crop sensor is if you don't have a lot of money tied up in super telephotos or telephoto lenses, you can increase your focal length on your telephoto lens. You know, you can bump up from like maybe a 200 lens to a 300 lens on a crop sensor. I usually suggest that you have at least a 20 megapixel minimum, just so it gives you a lot of flexibility as far as your cropping and changing your picture or editing your picture later. Because the one thing about birds is, you know, you're not in a studio to where you can tell them where to sit and how to pose and everything. So a lot of times your viewfinder is at a greater area than what you really want your final picture to come out. So you're going to have to crop it down. So when you do that, it always helps to have some extra megapixels in there so you don't start getting a lot of noise and things like that. 1/800th of a second minimum shutter speed is kind of relative. It kind of depends on your subject, you know, what they're doing, how fast they're moving, what you want to do with it and everything. But it's a good rule of thumb, I guess, that it'll give you a good picture in most cases. You know, it certainly won't do well for hummingbirds or anything that's moving very fast, but for most cases, if the bird is feeding or at a water feature or something like that, it'll work very well. One thing that I certainly think is necessary when you're taking bird pictures is having a burst mode on your camera. Birds move very fast. Even when they're feeding and watering and everything, they don't sit still. One thing about birds is they're constantly looking around because everything wants to eat them. So they're always looking around and moving, and you know, you can't, just when you think you have the perfect shot, by the time you trip that shutter button, the perfect shot is gone. So it helps to have a series of pictures to where you can pick the best pose and what you really want in there. You have a couple different, several different focusing modes, but the two most common is single focusing AF or continuous. The focusing single AF works very well when they're not moving fast, and you want to focus on that eye and make sure that that's what you get and focus. And if they're flying or moving a lot, then you probably want your camera to be able to follow the subject and focus in their movements. A lot of cameras nowadays are coming out with the eye tracking. I just got a new Nikon Z9, and it's extremely good. In fact, it has a mode just for bird photography, where if you've got one or two birds, it'll find the one you want, and then it'll follow that bird in focus. And I know most of the major brands have that now on the newer cameras, and they're getting better with that all the time. Lenses. The big thing about lenses is, and I guess the general question is, how much money do you have? How much do you want to spend? You can go anywhere from several $100s up to $20,000, depending on what type of lens you get and how much you want to spend. One good option for people is renting. I just bought a Nikon Z lens, a 100 to 400, because I use that range of lens a lot. But the 800 f4, which runs about $16,000, I rarely use that. I did that a lot 10 years ago when I was actually going out in the wild and setting up in blinds, and my subjects and things were very far away, and I needed a high quality long lens. So I would rent the 800, and instead of paying $18,000 or $16,000, I could rent that lens for about $600 for 7 days. And if you're only doing that once or twice a year, that's certainly the way to go, unless you just have money to burn. Some of the examples of lenses that you can buy, my favorite lens is the 300 2.8. And you can even get that at Precision Camera, or you can go to Rent My Lenses or borrowlenses.com. And the good thing about those places, they usually have them available. They're very inexpensive to rent. They'll send it to you, UPS. You use the lens, they've got all the packing and labels and everything, to where when you're done with it, you just pack it back up, put the tape on it, put the label on it, drop it off at your nearest UPS or FedEx place, and you're done with it. The insurance is all there, you're all covered, and it's just a great way to go, unless you just want to use the lens a lot, you want to put the money into it. For most photography, 200 is pretty much the minimum, and sometimes that's a little tough to get by on. 300 is better, and 400 works very well. A good option on a 200, I know that Nikon has the old standby, the 200 millimeter or 70 to 210 2.8, which is a very, very good lens. And when you put a teleconverter, 2x teleconverter on there, you've got a 400 lens, and it's still a reasonably fast lens to where it'll work in most situations. It's good to have optical stabilization on your lens, which most of the better lenses come with that. There comes situations where you're having a handhold, and at least at my age, it's very difficult to handhold a lens like that and get good sharp pictures. So having a little help on that always comes in handy. And I mentioned the teleconverters also. That's a good way to upgrade the focal length on your lens without having to go buy a whole new lens or putting a lot more money into it. Tripods. When you're doing bird photography, that's almost a must, because you're usually working with the telephotos and the super telephotos. And if it's a good fast lens, you've got a lot of glass in there, so it's pretty heavy and it's pretty hard to hold. Plus, getting a good sharp picture is essential in bird photography. It needs to be able to change position easily, and it needs to be able to support a lot of weight. You know, you get into the 300, 400, 2.8 lenses, you're talking about a pretty heavy lens. And so you don't want a cheap lens that doesn't support a lot of weight, because you're talking about a lot of money there that you don't want to have to end up replacing or whatever. You know, types of tripod heads are gimbal head, ball head. These are the three most common. The one on the left is a gimbal head, the one in the center is a ball head, and the one on the right is a universal. But there are many more types of tripod heads available, as you can see. But those three on the first panel were the ones most commonly used. Some other accessories, you can use flash, but that's not normally practical for bird photography. Unless you're in a blind that gets used a lot, birds are pretty skittish, and any kind of flash or anything that they don't recognize that acts quickly, they're going to be gone because they think it's something that's going to be after them. I have used it before in some blinds. It works very well. Remote triggers works very well because a lot of times if you don't have the availability of a blind or a place where you can get close enough, you can go set your camera up nearby where you want to photograph and just trigger the camera remotely. On some of these accessories like a Cam Ranger, you can even have your iPad or your smartphone available to where you can actually see your picture and control your picture from your smart device. So that's always a good option to have. You have your several different settings, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Program, which we don't talk about that too much. It comes in handy sometimes, but we like to go to where you have a little more control over your picture with your shutter priority, where you select the shutter and the camera selects the other settings, mainly your aperture to go along with that. Your aperture priority, where your depth of field is your number one choice. So you want to be able to set that, let the camera set your other settings. And if you're a real photographer, and I say that on the side, but a lot of people like to work in manual, which that's good because you should know enough about your camera and photography to be able to use that setting and use it effectively. One thing that I find that a lot of photographers don't feel comfortable with or kind of snub their nose at is auto ISO. I use that a lot because usually shutter speed and aperture is the main things I want. Cameras are getting sophisticated enough to where you get into your higher ISO settings that it handles that very well. And if not, even the programs in your editing are sophisticated enough since where it can handle any type of noise or grain on your pictures. And personally, I'd rather deal with noise in my editing than blurriness or the wrong depth of field. Now, one thing that the Z9 does that I found out about the other day that I like a lot is on its auto ISO, you can actually go in and set your minimum ISO and then set your maximum ISO, and then the camera will adjust within that range to where you don't get into the 25,000 ISO or the 50,000 ISO. It'll actually limit that. So you do have some control on that. And I've done some experimenting with my Z9, and right now I'm pretty comfortable shooting at 12,000 ISO. I don't get a whole lot of grain on that. And what I do get is easily dealt with in editing. I talked about the burst mode before, about being able to take continuous shots to where you can select your best shot, and you don't have to worry about that too much when you're actually dealing in that. You have the different types of metering. Matrix metering is something that I deal with, that I use a lot rather than the spot metering. And then you have your types of focusing, which I went over a little bit before. This is an example of when shutter priority is handy. As you can see, the bird is flying. This is out at Smith Oaks Rookery. I'm not actually panning, as you can tell from the background, but I have a high enough shutter speed to where I've got sharpness on all the features you want, the eyes, the head, and I get just a little bit of movement in the wingtips and the tail to where, you can tell that the bird's actually moving a little bit. This is an example of depth of field. I chose this because it gives, you can tell by the size of the cardinal in the background that it's very, very shallow depth of field here. But yet It's enough to where the important things on my main subject are all sharp and gives me the picture that I want. One problem with depth of field, and this is from my favorite lens, the 300 f2.8, is sometimes your depth of field is so shallow that you don't realize what the problems you have till later. If you look, the feathers on the wing and the side of the body are the sharpness that you really want. But the depth of field on this particular photo is so shallow that the feet and even the eyes and the beak and part of the tail are getting a little bit soft, a little softer than I really would want to have here. So 2.8 was not really the f-stop they should have had on something like this. And I usually like to go with something a little more depth of field, like a 4 or even an f8, because at the distances you're shooting at these types of birds, you know, you want a little bit more to where you don't want to get parts of the bird to go soft, like in this case. Another thing here, watch where you focus. You know, if the log here was my main subject, would have done a really good job on that, but not too good on the cardinal or even some of the areas of this photo and everything. So you really got to watch where you're focusing and make sure that you're getting the subject as your main focus point. This is an instance where I used the flash and didn't seem to bother this bird, or it happened so fast, didn't react to it enough. But there are instances where a flash does come in handy. This is, I believe, at the bird blind at La Alameda, and they get enough traffic out there at photographers to where they don't really get bothered too much by things like this. I hesitate to put this out there because this is, the variables in all of this are so relative that this changes probably from one scene to another or one subject to another. But I've got 4 different shooting banks in my camera that's set for different situations, to where instead of going through and changing everything, whenever I go out and shoot, if I go out something that I normally do, like for instance, bird photography, I can just go to one of my shooting banks and everything's pretty much preset to where I don't, you know, when you're getting those old as I am, you get forgetful sometimes. So every little bit of help helps you a little bit to where you can have your everything set up and just make minor adjustments to your settings. This is probably one of the more important things on bird photography, is you've got to know your subject, and knowing how to get to the birds and getting to where you want to take the pictures is very important, especially if you don't have the advantage of having a bird blind or something like that. You can't sneak up on birds. Like I said before, everything's out to eat them and they know it. So even when they're at a feeding station or whatever, they will put their head down, take a drink or take a bit of food, and then they look up and they're looking all around to make sure that everything's clear, that there's not a cat or something else sneaking up on them. So especially their head is constantly moving. So the best thing that you can do if you're not in a blind or anything is do what you can to where you don't appear to be a threat. Hang around in one area to where they can see you, but just stay in one place or move slowly. If you're trying to get closer to them, do it in increments to where you're moving a little closer, stopping, moving around to where they can keep an eye on you. Don't go directly at them, go in a zigzag pattern or something to where they kind of get used to you and they realize that, well, okay, they're not the meal for you, or you're not coming at them to be a meal. Raptors especially are very difficult to sneak up on. You know, you go driving by on a car and everything, and you see them on a tree or a telephone line or something like that. You say, oh, I'm going to stop and take a shot. Well, you're fine as long as you're in a moving car and going by, but as soon as you stop that car, especially close enough to be able to take a decent picture, they're usually gone. So you have to do something to where they get used to you and they don't perceive you as a threat. One of the best things to do is find a good spot to where you think it's a good place for birds, and that's usually water or an area to where they come for food, and just set up and let them come to you. And the main thing is patience, patience, patience. You know, if you're willing to sit and let them come and you're there for a while, you can usually have some birds come in. And the fact that they're coming to you, they don't perceive you so much as the threat that they would if you're going to them. Wearing the right type of clothes is important. Bright, light colored clothes show up a whole lot better, especially when you move around and everything. They can see that a lot easier, to where if you're in darker clothes that are more one color, you blend in a little bit more with the background, and it's not such a apparent movement to them. And the main thing is just move slow and be quiet. You know, loud noises, movement, all that is things that will spook a bird, and they'll usually be gone then. When you're photographing birds, the most important thing is to get the eye sharp. If you don't have a sharp, that's the same thing with portrait photography and a lot of different things, but especially with birds. If that's usually the thing that people go to first on a bird photo is the eyes, because birds have such brilliant, eye-catching eyes that's will make or break a photo. You know, if you don't have an eye sharp on a bird photo, it's usually not a good photo and it's not worth keeping. And as I said before, use a tripod, because getting the feathers and the features on a bird is also extremely important on bird photography. Faster shutter speeds, you know, catching that movement. Birds move very fast, and being able to freeze that subject with just a little bit of movement also helps in your bird photography. Choosing your background. You don't want a cluttered background with objects that are distracting and taking away from the subject. I'm going to give examples of all these things here in a little bit. Try focusing on one spot or area. If you go to a place like, well, even these bird ranches and the bird blinds, they usually have several different areas that the bird go to. And if you're constantly changing your camera position and where you're shooting, you're going to be missing a lot of photos. So you want to try to find a spot to where the birds seem to be congregating, and they usually, when they're coming in, like to a feeding station or whatever, they'll usually go to a perch first, and then they'll go down to where you feed. So if you find that favorite spot where they're going to first, that's a good place to focus on, or even the feeding station itself. We've already talked about blinds a lot. And the time of day is also important, you know, to get the right coloring and the right contrast and shadows and interesting shots. Early morning and late evening is good for bird photography. That's also usually when they're feeding or they're most active. You know, it's especially like in the summertime. They, you know, they're like us. They don't like the heat a whole lot, so they're going to try to do their feeding or their activity in the early morning and late evening. That's usually the best time to give you good photography light. Shooting with the sun to your back and one side will give you nice shadow detail, and you won't get a lot of flat lighting then. And as I said before, shoot lots of pictures in burst mode. You know, you're not changing out every 24 pictures with a roll of film and then having to spend $7 or $8 having processed. You know, digital pictures are cheap and you can take thousands of pictures. So don't be afraid to do that. This is an example of watching your background. This is at the Santa Clara Ranch. And of course, they have wind farms all over the place. So you want to get in a position to where you don't have the distracting things that you may have to edit out, or that will take away from your subject. You know, get a little bit closer and get your background to where it's not taken away from your subject. Picking a spot. You know, this is a place where I think these next pictures are my 12-year-old grandson, because I took him to this place and I kept telling him, I said, you know, because he kept moving the camera around trying to catch all the different action and everything. I said, look, just focus on that area over there and take some pictures, because as you're taking your burst mode and you're getting those pictures, you never know what's going to come in right after it. Same way with the burst mode. You know, you want to be able to pick your best shot. You know, this was an action here to where I took several different pictures and a lot of good shots, of which, you know, probably most of them would make nice pictures. Time of day. This is a picture that was taken out at Smith Oaks that was more in the middle of the afternoon. Not really a bad picture, but pretty flat lighting, not a whole lot of contrast, and probably would have been better later on in the day. It's probably the worst time to take a picture, high noon, to where your highlights are blown out, not a lot of shadow detail, very little contrast, and just not really the kind of picture you would actually like to have. This is more the best time of day. This is more like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was out at Smith Oaks. At this time of day, the sun is going to be behind you and a little bit off to the side. So you're getting nice coloring, nice separation between your subject and the background as far as the contrast, getting shadow detail even on the egret. So a much better time of day to take your photos. Or if you get out there early enough, the sun comes up toward you, and you can get some nice backlighting and even get some good photos at that time of day. It gives you a whole different perspective, whole different type of image. And one more thing, getting into photographing etiquette. Most of us shoot in groups, workshops, going out with friends. If you're going to a public place like the bird blinds in the state parks or the rookeries, you're going to have people around you. Just be a good photographer as far as the other people around you. Be aware of what the other people are doing. Don't be that person who didn't bring a long enough lens to get the close shot that they want to, so they go and get in front of everybody else. And I know everybody's encountered that, and maybe even some of us have done that from time to time. But just be aware of the other people and be courteous to them. If you do have to do that, ask permission. Say, hey, do y'all mind if I go in front and get a few close-up shots? Most people will have no problem at all in the fact that you were nice enough to ask them, and they'll let you go do that and everything. When you do that, announce what you're going to do, especially if you're in a blind where most time the birds can see some movement in there. And so if you do make quick movements, they see something and they'll usually spook, which is right at the time other people are taking pictures. So tell people what you're going to do. And so they're ready, and they can either tell you to hold off so they can get the shot that they want, or they'll let you go do what you want to do. If you're changing lenses or equipment, move to the back and do that. Don't do it in front of everybody, especially if you're having to do a lot of movement and everything that could scare the birds. And flash is not a good time, not a good thing to use in a group setting, because like I said, that usually will scare the birds off. Like I said, I'm more of an artist than a photographer, and I do a lot of editing and post-processing. That's not to say I don't value the importance of taking a good picture in camera, because even the best Photoshop people have to have something good to work with in the first place to make a great image. But don't be afraid to do that, because that I consider editing software to be a part of your photography equipment. You've got to have something that's going to separate your work from all the other people out there. Cameras are getting so sophisticated and everything now that just knowing how to use f-stops and shutter speeds and ISO and being able to put those together doesn't really set you apart. Did we lose that? Okay, here we go. Doesn't really set you apart from a lot of other photographers. You know, cell phones and smart devices are so sophisticated now that there's not a lot separating professional photographers from serious amateurs other than your creativity and what you do with those photos. And you can do a lot with the photo in your camera, but you can also take it beyond that. Cropping is a major edit. You know, how you position your subject in your photo is very important. Removing distracting elements, especially lighter areas than your subject. Darker background gives you more depth and focuses on the subject. And try different artistic techniques. And one thing that really will set you apart is put a digital frame or matte on your photo. You know, sometimes you don't have to go to the extreme in your editing. In this case, I just removed a few of the twigs in front and also the one that was going across the beak. Really, if I was taking this image all the way, I probably would have moved that entire branch from the photo to where it wasn't distracting or more or less catching your eye away from your subject. But just this, I use this as an example of sometimes just a little bit of editing can help out your photo tremendously. Another example. And most of these photos are right out of camera. You know, a really nice photo as far as capturing the subject and everything, but the other egret on the nest in the back, very distracting. Takes away from your subject and doesn't give you the full impact that you normally would like to have on your photo. This is an example of adding a matte, a digital matte to your photo. You know, makes your photo stand out and also gives you a sense of being a professional, even if you're not, or if you are. It just goes to show that, hey, I'm proud of my photo. I want to really display it to the best that I can. And these are very easy to do. If you are doing a matte, try to make it have color harmony with the rest of your image. Use some of the color out of your image as your matte. And if you're doing a stroke line around your matte, then use something that you want to pull out of your photo and call more attention to it. You know, show another example of having a plain background. I guess that's why I got into bird photography in my image competition a lot, because you have a good image that catches people's attention, and you can usually isolate it to where you don't have a lot of distracting elements in your photo and helps in the competition. I think this was my first imaging or loan collection image that I had. I think I scored a 95 on this in IPC a couple years ago. Be artistic, you know, take a photo and, you know, either through Photoshop, and they even have some, I forget what this program is, but there's a program that'll do reflections. And you have a lot of versatility with it to where you can add a little bit more interest to it. It doesn't take a whole lot of work and makes a little more striking image. This is an example of picking the best one. This is an image I pulled out of the images I used a while ago to illustrate the burst modes. And this is the one I like the most. And take it to the next level. You know, do something with it to where it'll separate you from other photographers and make people notice your work a little bit more. This is one of my images be coming up in the next IPC competition. I still have to work with this a little bit more, but it's getting there. Another example, one of my favorite photos, really nice photo, like the way it came out and everything. But there's more you can do with it. Another one of my upcoming images for next year, for this year's competition, is I call this one the Lookout. Another thing, go beyond your initial image. This is an image that I took at Smith Oaks. You know, good capture, interesting things going on, but a lot of distracting elements. So the first thing you do is you crop it. You know, start getting some of those things out of it. But the problem with this is, even though it's a very nice image, you know, the egg, which I call this custody dispute, the egg, which is a major part of the image, is kind of getting lost with all the other egrets on the nest all around it and everything. So I took this to a final image. This image actually was the highest scoring image in the Colorado, the Maryland, and the Pennsylvania state competitions this last year in 2021. And it actually scored a perfect 100 at the Colorado state competition. And I'm very hopeful for this image in upcoming competition. By the way, I hope none of y'all are IPC judges. So if so, you're gonna have to disqualify yourself at this next competition. So anyway, didn't take as long as I thought I might, but I'm not a big talker. This is my contact information. Anytime, if you have any questions, anything at all, don't hesitate to contact me or call me, or whatever you need. You know, if you have any questions about like some of the different locations or things like that, very happy to talk to anybody on this. So, any questions?
Yes. Roy, I was just curious as to how often you use a gimbal as opposed to hand holding.
At my age, a lot. It depends on the lens that I've got. You know, if I'm using a 70 to 200 or something like that, I probably won't put a gimbal on that. You know, I'll hand hold that. But if I get into like a 300 2.8, and especially if I get into anything more like that, like a 400 2.8 or whatever, I have to have a gimbal. I can't hand hold that.
Do you have any preference on types or brands of gimbals?
Well, there again too, how much do you want to spend? The one I use, I got off, I think I got it off of B&H, but I might have gotten off of Amazon. And I think it was like 80 or 90 bucks. And you can spend $400 or $500 on a gimbal. And to tell you the truth, the one I have for that price, I don't know what else I would need. I know that they do a better job when you get into the more expensive gimbals, but this inexpensive one has pretty much done everything I've ever wanted it to do.
Good to know. Thank you.
If you want to know in particular what that one is, you know, contact me and I'll look it up, and you know, I can easily find that.
Okay, great.
Roy, I was wondering which locations in Austin. Do you go down to Town Lake, Lake Travis, Eagles out at Marble Falls?
I've been to Marble Falls. I've done that. I haven't done the other ones you mentioned in Austin. I'm always looking for more locations and everything. I usually have my favorites. Like I said, Pedernales is one of my favorites because it's such nice bird blinds out there. They're big. They feed regularly. They get a good variety of birds. The water features are especially good. Come April or May, you're going to get a lot of the migration coming through to where, year round, they have their locals that, the cardinals, scrub jays, a lot of those that are there pretty much year round. But when the migration starts, you get in your painted buntings and a lot of different varieties and things. But because of the facilities there and the variety you get and everything, I just haven't had the need to go looking for many other locations. Although I've heard about those, and I'll get there someday because I've heard a lot about them.
Roy,
Go ahead.
your egg custody suit or custody dispute photograph. How did you make the editing steps in that? Just basically, I assume it was all in Photoshop for the background removal.
Yes. Now, one thing, I could enter that in the artist category, which for those of you who don't know, they basically have two categories that you can enter in PPA image competition. Well, three when you count wedding, but we don't go there.
Thank you.
They have illustrative and they have artistic. In illustrative, if you put different images together, every part of that image has to be a photograph that you have taken. You can't go on the internet or one of the stock photo places and grab somebody's image and put it in there. You have to have all the elements of the photo have to be parts of what you have done. So in that case, I went and found a photo that had a nice the background that I wanted, and dropped it into a layer behind that. Of course, I did a lot of painting, and it's not a straight photo. There's a lot of painting that went into it, but all of it was part of my photo and everything. Now, in artistic, you don't have to use any of your images. They're judging more your editing abilities and your creative abilities. I used most of my photos in my artistic. I mean, that's why I say in a custody dispute, I could use that as an artistic image, and I might do that because I'm working towards my Master of Arts degree. But in that case, you have to put your guide images in below the photo so that they can see what you use to make the final product. And like I said, they're not only judging the image itself, but they're mainly judging your skill in putting that image together. One thing I do want to bring up along with this, a couple things, is, I think the turning point in my photography career was when I got into image competition. You don't have to be a member of PPA or APPA or whatever. You can actually go on printcompetition.com and you can enter in these PPA competitions. In fact, Virginia has a competition going on tonight. They've got over 600 images in there. I'll probably watch it after I get through with this. But you can learn a lot from that. But you can also enter on your own. You won't win any awards or get any merits or anything like that, but you can get scores and judging and everything. The American Society of Photographers, of which I'm a member, and you have to be a master photographer to be a member, they have their annual competition the end of next week. But you do not have to be a member of ASP to enter. It costs, I think, $5 or $10 more to enter if you're a non-member. But you get some of the best judges there are who will be looking at your photos and giving you feedback on that. And they've got over 600 images in that. One good thing about ASP is they have a new category to where it's raw images, to where you can't do anything to that image. You have to, instead of submitting a JPEG, you submit a raw image, and they judge strictly on what comes out of your camera. PPA has kind of done that. They started this last year. They have a new category that they call reportage. And it's basically, you take your image and you can only do minor adjustments. You can do cropping, you can do contrast, color correction, basically things that you can do in Lightroom and Bridge or Camera Raw, but you cannot composite, you can't, basically do a lot of layers from Photoshop or whatever. So they have heard a lot of the complaints about, that the awards were going to the people that were good in Photoshop or things like that, or editing or whatever. And they wanted more judging of people's ability to create their image out of camera. So I think that's a good thing, because that opens things up to a lot of different photographers in. But as I said, I really encourage you to get in the image competition, even if you don't join the organizations and things, because it can really help you improve your photography. I shoot now for image competition. When I'm taking pictures, I think a lot more about composition. I think a lot more about the background, getting the subject in the right position to where I don't have to do a lot of removing distracting elements and things like that, to where the difference between my photography now and 5 years ago is just incredible. And it's only because of image competition. It just makes you into a better photographer. And let me put in a plug for Austin PPA. We have a meeting next Monday at 6 o'clock at Precision Camera. We always meet the third Monday of each month. In the past, there's been, and we would really like to have a lot more members and everything. Haven't encouraged that too much in the past, because we've always had a requirement that you had to have we wanted professional photographers. I don't do this for a living. I make money off of photography, and I make some decent money, but it's not my source of living and everything. It may be here in a few years when I retire, but we now have a new membership level. It's called Aspiring Members. And basically, this is for photographers who are serious about their photography and maybe want to start making money off of it, but they either are not ready for that step or they don't know how. So we've opened that level of membership up for people so that they can kind of get their foot in the door, get their foot in the water, and kind of find out a little bit more about it. And we've got a lot of people who do make their living off of photography that are more than willing to help them out in any way of making that step in their photography. And next Monday, we have a speaker. The speaker is actually going to be on Zoom, but we're meeting in person. His name is Aaron Hockley, and he's going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how it relates to photography, how artificial intelligence is in all the different aspects of photography, in your camera and your software and all the different things. And he's supposed to be a really good expert on this subject. So we really encourage anybody who would like to attend that to come to the meeting, and we would certainly welcome you to be there.
What time is the meeting?
Well, the social aspect and a business part of it starts at 6 o'clock. We usually get there and we kind of like to go around and talk to people and meet them and everything. And then we have a short business meeting. We have the results of our monthly image competition. And then usually about 6:30 or 6:45 is usually when we get the speaker going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just getting the opportunity to meet the people that show up at APPA is worth showing up at 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
always
and like I said, we've got people who are in all different aspects of photography, headshots, commercial, wedding, and some of these people are, well, they're all very good, but some of them are really, really good. And we are more than willing to share our knowledge, our experience, our suggestions, or anything like that with anybody in photography. It's just like tonight. I'm not the greatest speaker in the world, and this is the first time I put on this presentation, so I'm not a polished orator yet, but I really enjoy getting with people who have a like interest with me and talking about something I'm very passionate about.
Any
That
more
was-
questions, folks?
No, but thank you so much. That was very informative and inspiring and motivating. So
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Roy, thank you very much, sir. I do appreciate you being with us. And we always
yeah.
learn something.
Oh,
Go ahead.
one more plug is, Bill told you about the workshop that I'm doing out at Pedernales in March. In May, I think it's going to be May 21st, I'm doing another workshop out at Smith Oaks Rookery. Not sure about the timing on that yet. Unfortunately, that's the only time I could do it. Just for you people who are interested in like photography of the herons and egrets and so forth, the best time to photograph out there is in March, about the middle of March to the latter part of March. Of course, this varies from year to year, but middle of March, latter part of March, the egrets and the spoonbills are building nests out there and laying eggs and things. And the egret eggs usually hatch around 1st of April. And the spoonbills are usually a little bit later than that. And after the egrets have kind of moved out and so forth, then around the 1st of May, the tricolor herons start coming in. Of course, there's other ones that come in there too, cormorants, green herons. There's a lot of different things like that, but that's usually the big three from middle of March till about the middle of May is a good time to get out there to get chicks and eggs and things like that. And I'm doing a workshop on May 21st. That might be a little bit late. I'm hoping there's still a lot of tricolors out there then, but that's the only time, we could arrange to do it.
Roy, I was wondering if you could say, in terms of bird watching resources on the internet, do you recommend, and I wanted to know the Houston Preserve again. Is there a place where you can see a lot of the locations for the preserves and bird
Yes.
places?
Yeah, you can go on the Houston Audubon website and they have a list of all of their facilities and their activities. They do a lot of different things for photographers. I mean, they're wonderful out there, and especially at the Raptor Center. There's a photographer who's the husband of one of the ladies in charge. I don't think he really works out there, but he's always out there, and he's a great photographer. And I mean, he is very, very helpful in helping people on that. And you get a lot of good shots there of the raptors and so forth. And but the website for Houston Audubon is a very, very good resource.
Thank you.
Could you please ask Roy to stop the sharing the screen so we can see everybody?
I can do that.
Thank you.
All right.
That's not quite it yet,
No.
Roy.
How about that?
That's it.
There you
Perfect.
go.
All right. I told you I'm not the most technically competent person there is.
I was about to ask you to share again and
Yeah.
show us your married images and talk about them just a little bit.
The ones that are already merited, or
Yeah, the ones that are on the website, your website. They're absolutely gorgeous.
Let me get to them and then I'll get back on the sharing if you don't.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a few words about how much processing has gone into them and just the level of effort that went into having those images.
Well, I started my first competition in 2017, and I didn't merit anything then. Of course, I didn't even know what a presentation was. When they said, well, this is a good image, but it doesn't have a presentation, I'm going, what's a presentation? And then I found out, well, okay, that's what that is. So let me get back here again.
Yes, just for people in presentations, PPA kind of expects you to have your images matted and the mat to work nicely with the images. And in general, NAPfS doesn't do matted images.
All right, well, this is kind of challenging for me. What are you seeing? Anything?
Seeing a rodeo rider and a cat.
Okay, well, don't pay attention to cat because that's what I'm working on right now. Do you see the rodeo rider there?
Yeah.
You've got a drop down. There you go.
Yeah. That was my 2019 image. Let's see.
Yeah, can you make that a little bigger?
Well, I'm trying to.
There you go.
How about that?
That's
That
nice.
works.
Okay. I don't think that made the loan. No, that one didn't make the loan collection. Are you still seeing?
Yes.
Okay. That was another merit image. This one, I think I told you already, this was my first merit image. It's interesting how this works because when this first came up, I think, and just as a little background, if you don't know, up until last year, PPA had a scoring system to where anything below 80, well, 75 to 79 was considered above average, which, you know, there's a lot of good photographs that fit into that. Like I said, we're probably in a normal annual competition, 3,000 of the 5,000 photographs will fit into that 79 or below. If you score 80 or above, you're accredited with a merit, and your merits accumulate to go towards your degrees and things. Like I said, that I had to get 13 merit images in order to qualify for my Master of Photography degree. And this one, when it first came up, it scored an 88, which they call that an excellent. And I thought that was pretty good because, you know, I hadn't scored anything that high before. And one judge challenged it, which when you usually have anywhere from 3 to 5 judges, and they put a numerical score in there and it's averaged together. And when the score is posted, each judge can challenge it or whatever. If they think it's scored too high, they can challenge it and say, well, I don't think this should be scoring this. I think it should, because of this, you know, it should go lower. And so then they revote and everything. So when this came up, one judge said he challenged it. And he came up there and he said, well, I'm from Ohio and the cardinal is the state bird of Ohio. And this is an excellent cardinal. I just love this image. I don't think we should, I think this is too low a score and we should go much higher on this. So he put his score in at 95 and everybody else bowed to his pressure. And it ended up scoring 95. And anytime you get a 95 and above, you automatically qualify for a loan collection or imaging excellent award. And if you do that, you not only get one merit, but then you get an extra merit for getting into that category. So it's one way you can build up your merits and everything. I think we saw this image earlier, and I talked about how the shallow depth of field was hurting me. And I think I went in and picked some other images out to where I didn't have such a shallow depth of field to where here I was able to get the beak and the eye and the feet and basically all of the bird in focus. Because the first time I entered this image, well, it was a little bit different pose, it's a different image. I didn't merit, and it was because, well, you know, the eye and the beak is an important part of the bird, and they're a little soft on the focus. So I didn't merit on that particular image because of that. And like I said, it helps your photography because those judges can pick out the most minute flaw in your images that, you know, you might have looked at it 100 times and didn't see some of the things that they saw. We'll go to 2020 now. Okay. Here we are again. Please don't laugh at my fumbling around here. This is my 2021 image. I was very disappointed in this image because I entered it in other competitions and it scored very well. It's usually in the 90s. So I felt very sure that this image would merit, and it did. But then I thought it was a cinch for getting a loan collection or imaging excellence, and it did not. And I still hadn't figured out why, because this is one of my favorite images. And let's see. This is another one that, are y'all seeing, y'all see the Bobcat?
Yes.
Okay. This one merited, but did not go imaging excellence. And I call this one checking a 6. And I took this in Montana, I think. That was back when I could actually get out to the wild and, you know, sit up in the blind and everything for a while, but I don't do that anymore. And this one is Eyes on the Prize. And I'm writing a blog on my website and I'm going to post it. It's a blog of where this image went through the process in getting to this point. I changed this image considerably because this is not anywhere near the original image. I'm not sure if I can get back to where it was. But this one went for the loan collection. And it was something that I probably worked on it off and on for 6 months to get it to this point. But in the original image, the horse was very close to the barrel and it was actually going in the other direction when it started out. And I think we saw this one. This one also made the imaging excellence or loan collection. And then my ones from last year. Well, that was last year, I think. Yes, anyway, so that's just a few of them there. Hopefully that answered your question, Bill.
I'll always ask a few more, but I think that's as much as most people can deal with.
Yeah, if anybody's more interested in that, you know, I'll be happy to share more of my images, and I could probably do it a little bit better than what I'm doing here. Really didn't come prepared for that, but hopefully that helped a little bit. But, you know, I'm not saying that you have to go through a lot of editing or compositing to get merit images. I've seen a lot of images that had very little editing done to it that have scored very, very well. It's just that there are a lot of good photographers out there, a lot of them in your organization. I've seen some of your work and I'm extremely impressed by some of the work that you have done, but because you're basically going against other very, very good photographers, your work may be better than 90% of the photographers out in the country, but to stand out from the other 10% who are excellent photographers, you've got to take it up to another level. And sometimes that involves editing. Sometimes it just involves creative thinking and, you know, going out and, you know, in unusual situations and getting a shot that people aren't used to seeing that really stands out.
The right place at the right time.
That's right. You know, that's one thing that appeals to the judges a lot is if they see something that they haven't seen a lot of. You know, birds are actually, I see those starting to score lower because they're seeing a lot more great bird images. So they have to see something in a bird image that puts it above all the other ones. You know, back in the mid 2000s, HDR was the new thing. So basically, when people started posting HDR images in image competition, they all scored well because the judges hadn't seen anything like that before. And so they were, you know, oh, wow, that it really got their attention and it scored now. Now you can't hardly merit unless you have a really, really exceptional HDR image. You don't see much HDR anymore because it doesn't score well anymore because everybody's doing it.
Yeah, if I shoot HDR, I don't want you to know I did a bracketed set and combined them.
This is Clay, the membership secretary, Roy, and if Bill hadn't mentioned it before, we would like to honor you with a year's membership for being our speaker tonight.
Oh,
So-
wow, that is wonderful. Because like I said, I've been member there before and I liked it. And I was going to be a member anyway, but I really appreciate that.
We know you would have. Yes, we saw that you were a previous member, but not in this recent year. So Ed, let's put him down for a 2022 membership, and he can go to the website and create a login for his membership.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll
thank
send
you very much.
I'll
That's,
But
send
you
you the
can't-
instruct-
You
I'll
can't
send you the
compete with any of
instructions,
the
Roy.
images we've seen.
well, I have to tell you, I probably won't be doing much in the image competition because up until this year, I competed every month in the APPA monthly competition, and just getting one image ready every month took up a lot of my time. So when I made Photographer of the Year this last year, which, you know, your image competition is basically what determines that, I said, okay, I got it. So, you know, I'm going to concentrate on the district and the international competition and spend my time there. So, like I said, I would be happy to be a member and very thankful for that. But I probably won't be doing much in the image competition there because my focus is elsewhere right now. My ultimate goal, and I'm going to jinx myself by stating this, my ultimate goal now, first of all, it was Photographer of the Year and then getting my master's and now my master artist degree. But my ultimate goal is to represent Team USA in the World Photographic Cup. That's basically the Olympics of photography. And every year they, you know, PPA chooses like, I think their 10 best images of their 60,000 members. And then those images go against like 30 or 40 other countries that have presented their best photography images. And so, like I said, that is my ultimate goal, is to represent Team USA in that competition. So we'll see if I ever get there.
Fantastic. That's a wonderful goal. And I don't want to impose upon you further with any commitments, but I know Mark is our coordinator for competitions, and he's always eager to invite, but I'm sure all the advanced class photographers would be very honored if you would be a guest judge at some time later in the year, perhaps.
I would be happy to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be attending the PPA juror judging training at the end of March, where I'm actually going to go into training to become an IPC juror.
Wow, we would love to benefit from some of that knowledge you have already.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank
There you
you.
go, Mark.
All right, I've got it on. I'll check with you after March.
That would be good for me too.
Yeah.
March and April are very busy for me.
Okay. Well, I'll get back to you, but we would love it.
Okay.
Mark,
Roy, are
just-
you going to be at Texas School?
Yes, I will. Have you gone over Texas School with some of the people here?
No, you can
No,
say
we
something
haven't
about it.
talked. we haven't really talked about Texas School. You might want to give a little quick overview. I assume there's still classes open.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are. Texas School is held up in suburb Addison, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. It's usually the last week of April, and it's a week-long school. Anybody can attend. It costs you a little bit more if you're not a TPPA member, but it's usually about $600. They bring in approximately 40 to 50 of the top photographers across the nation. And each of those teaches a week-long class. And so basically you spend a week, 8 to 10 hours a day in intensive study of whatever. I mean, compositing, light painting, wedding photography, all many different types of photography. And you get instruction from the very best photographers that there are. And they've been going on for like 40 or 50 years. And before COVID, they would have, I think the year before COVID, they had 1,300 participants from every state in the union and from 17 foreign countries. And that's the stature of this school, is it brings in people from all over the world to come specifically take this type of instruction.
It is an experience to be at Texas School.
And we have a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
I mean, they have parties. They provide the evening meals. All the equipment manufacturers are there. Canon, Sony, Nikon, and most of them run specials on their equipment during that school also.
If you would like, I can get with Ed and post just a pointer to Texas School website.
I just put a link in the chat,
Okay, super.
but then it could also be on the website. And
You got it, Clay. I don't think, talk, and type at the same time. I plan to be there. Evelyn will probably be there. Roy will be there. I assume Bree will be there also.
Oh yeah, Richard.
Okay.
Mhm.
All the usual suspects from Austin PPA. And of course, some of you may remember Bree. She has been active and presented for us before.
Oh, let me say one more thing. I've said that in Austin, on these organizations, on Austin PPA, they're geared more towards professionals, but we've altered that a little bit. In Texas PPA and PPA, you do not have to be a professional photographer to be a member of those organizations. You do not have to have a sales tax number. You don't have to have a website. You just have to have a passion for photography and, of course, pay the dues. But it opens up a lot of avenues for you. In PPA, when you're a member of PPA, you're insured, your equipment's insured for you get equipment insurance up to $15,000. If you happen to do an event and you have some liability, they're covered with liability insurance. They have a lot of benefits above and beyond the instruction and the different activities that they do. So you might want to check that out also.
And I know we have lots of folks here in town that are national PPA members and don't participate in APPA and or Texas PPA.
Right. That's what I say. Just don't feel like you're confined to certain pigeonholes or anything. There's a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, if you can take the time and feel comfortable going to Texas School, it is a worthwhile experience. And if you aren't sure of yourself, don't sign up for too advanced a class.
Well, one thing about it, in the classes, in the description of the classes, it will tell you, this class is for beginners, this class is for intermediates, this class is for advanced. So, you know, you won't get stuck in something that you may be out of your element. That's either too basic to where you don't learn anything, or too advanced to where you're constantly trying to keep up. You know, they're very good about trying to make sure that nobody gets stuck in the wrong place.
If there's not any more questions, Clay, Ed, Mark, any other, or Stephen, anything else?
No, just remember to, popular voting is open for the March competition. And just check the themes for the rest of the year so that you can start looking for subjects for months later on down the road. It's easier if you don't wait till the last minute.
Good advice.
That's part of it, though.
Pressure makes us work
Deadline.
harder.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Deadline. I, for one, have really appreciated your talk, Roy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate y'all putting up with me
We had
Right.
we had
and all my
several people,
technical defaults.
several people in the chat have already apologized. They're leaving early, but they did thank you. And
Okay.
appreciated your talk very much. If you
You're
look at the
welcome.
chat.
All right. And I'll be seeing more of y'all in the future.
Great.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
Roy.
night, gentlemen,
Thanks.
Good
ladies.
night, all.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.